What's up, guys? Welcome to your second game development tutorial for Java applets. And what we're going to learn about in today's tutorial is setting up our thread, what a thread allows us to do. Again, I talked about threads in the previous tutorial series, that just the basic Java, and we didn't really use it for anything that great. We use it for like counting numbers or something. Again, threads just allow us to do multiple things at the same time. We can be playing Eclipse right now and I can be listening to Pandora on my computer from the internet, because my computer allows multiple threads to run at the same time. So the thread that handles my internet or my Pandora that I'm listening to music through, it will handle all that information for me, while my other thread allows me to work with Eclipse and developing games for you guys. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up our thread within our start method. We could also do it within our initialize method, but we probably want to do it within the start method because, again, this will get called every time, whereas our initialize gets called only the first time this application loads up, or this applet. So this would be good for like a loading screen or something like that. The way I showed you guys to set up a thread in the previous tutorials, we'd type out thread and then just our name, which would be thread, set this equal to a new thread, and then we did something like public void run. I think we did something like that, if you remember, which is fine. We can do that. But just to show you guys a little bit different way to set up a thread, which you'll see often when you're looking through other people's examples of games and such, what we're going to do instead is go up to our class name, which we had starting point, extends applet, and then we're going to implement something called runnable. Implements runnable. And then what we have to do is we have to load, again, when we implement something, we have to use the method from whatever we're implementing. So we're going to hover over here and go add unimplemented methods. As you can see, this run method gets added. This should already look somewhat familiar, because in that previous way of setting up the thread, we had a run method that our thread needed to listen to. So now when we scroll back up to where we were setting up our thread, we had a thread called thread. All we're going to do is we're going to add a semicolon here, and then we're going to refer to this. Now what this is doing is it's saying, hey, we're setting up a thread, and I know a thread needs a run method. I know that's how you kind of tell the thread what to do, is within its run method. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a new thread, and we're going to say we want to refer to this. So what that is doing is it's saying, hey, there should be some sort of a run method within this class called starting point, and since we implemented runnable, it'll be like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I threw in a run method somewhere in here. Check it out. That's what we're going to refer to. We're going to use this run, basically this run method to define this thread up here. So now what we can do is we can just set up our thread information. We can set up our thread information down here within our run method, and now our thread, which we also called thread, pretty lame name, but it's basically going to refer to that run method, and whenever we start this thread, it's going to refer to that run method down here. So just to kind of keep this close, I'm just going to cut the run method from down below and paste it after our start method here. So again, you guys know that when we're setting up this thread, it's referring to a run method, because again, a thread needs a run method. I know I've said that a few times, but it's good to remember those things. And the run method that's referring to is this, because we implemented a runnable, and so it's going to refer to this method right here, this run. Now all we've done is set up our thread. We haven't defined it because there's no information within our run method yet. But the important things about a thread is you can say, you can use some methods on the thread, such as thread.start. We're going to need to start our thread at some point. We can also say thread.sleep, which we'll use here in a second, and this will tell our thread to sleep for a certain period of time, like 100 milliseconds or a tenth of a second, which we'll actually get into in a second. All we're going to do first is we're going to say start our thread. Again, we defined our thread here of whatever is in the runnable. It's going to look down here, see what's in our run method. Right now we have nothing, but what we're going to do is we are going to set up an infinite loop within our thread. So we're going to say while true. So that's always going to be true. So it's going to just kind of loop through this while statement. And what we're going to do is we're going to say repaint. And we're also going to say thread, referring to the thread class, not our specific thread, which would be a lowercase t. we're referring to the thread class, and we're using that method called sleep that I just discussed earlier. And now what we're going to do is we're going to define our frame rate of our game. So a good frame rate is about 60 frames per second. So that's roughly about 17 milliseconds that we want to sleep. Again, 1,000 milliseconds is 1 second. So we divide 1,000 by 60. That comes up to be 16.66. So we're just going to round it to 17, which is about a frame rate of 58, something like that. Now we're getting an error because we need to surround this with a try and catch. So we're just going to hover over and say surround with try and catch, and there we go. And simply it adds our try and catch around this thread sleep. And why we have to add that is because sometimes threads, they aren't very sleepy. They don't want to sleep, and it'll like, no, I don't want to go to bed. I don't want to take a nap for 17 milliseconds. It'll just start freaking out, and our computer doesn't like that. And it might crash our program, something like that. So what we're going to say is we're going to try to sleep. If it doesn't, we're going to throw some kind of an exception, and we're just going to print that exception to the stack trace. We haven't really talked about this stuff, but this is for like debugging. It will tell us where our program messed up if we have some kind of a print statement within our debugger. But as for now, again, all you need to remember is just we're referring to the thread class. So again, this thread class, not our specific thread that we defined. And then we're just going to say sleep for 17 milliseconds. And now all it's going to do is it's going to loop through this an infinite amount of times. And there we go. So now we basically have set up our game framework. I know I told you that previously when we set up all the methods for Applet. But let's talk about everything that happens. Again, our Applet starts. It calls this initialize method. It's like, hey, there's nothing in there. That's cool. Let's go on to the next method that I need to call, which is start. Then we call our start method, or the computer will call our start method for us. And once it calls that start method, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a thread called thread. And what we set this thread equal to be is a new thread referring to this, whatever we're implementing, which we're implementing runnable. So it's going to refer to this run method down here. If this confuses you guys, you can also, do it the way I showed you in the last series, where we could just add a bracket there and then just a public void run. And, we could put our while true in here, and then, that infinite loop. And then we could also just say thread.sleep for 17 milliseconds, and then surround this with a try and catch, and we also have to repaint. So whichever way works better for you guys. I just want to show you both ways that you could have done this, but again, we could set it up like this just as well. I just want to show you how we could implement that. So now that I've showed you the other way, I'm just going to delete it. Pretty pointless cause of showing that way just to delete it, but I'm just going to refer to this way of setting up our thread. So now that we've set up our thread, what we're doing is we're setting this thread's run method again to whatever we're implementing. So it's this class's run method here, and all we're doing is we're repainting, which we haven't got to. I'll show you guys that in the next tutorial. Then we're allowing our thread to sleep for 17 milliseconds, and then it's going to loop through again, and it's going to repaint. So basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to have a canvas. We're just going to be repainting this canvas 60 times per second, roughly 58 point something, whatever. But that's why we have this sleep, and that's what the thread's going to do. It's going to handle our graphics for us. It's going to repaint and kind of handle how fast we want our canvas to repaint itself, all that stuff. So that's the basic setup for our game thread, and I will catch you guys in the next tutorial. Hopefully you aren't getting too lost, just let me know, but thanks again for watching.